Perfect. Hey guys, welcome back to the latest episode of the Growing a Dental Practice podcast. I am your host, Mike Hennon from Patient Boost. In today's episode, I'm joined by Dr. Paul Homoly, founder and owner of Homoly Communications. Paul is a former restorative dentist turned dental treatment presentation master trainer, and for over 40 years, he's been helping dental practices embrace fresh thinking about the treatment acceptance process, making it easy for patients to say yes. Welcome to the show, Paul. Thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Mike, I'm excited to be here. It's always fun to do an international program. I was about an hour ago. I just got off the line with a group that I'm working with here in the States. We have really a tremendous explosion in interest in what's called the Dental Support Organization, or the DSO. And DSOs are really looking for ways to improve profitability, lower cost, retain associate dentists, reward partner dentists, and the type of thing. And I'm working on an interesting project right now, Mike. This might be an interest to you and your listeners. There seems to be kind of two schools of thought as far as how to bring in the new adult non-emergency patient. Okay, the new adult non-emergency patient. Is this a patient who comes in through the dental hygiene group? That is, they check in at the front desk, then they go to the hygienist and or an assistant would do the diagnostics. Then they go in a hygienist chair. She does her exam. She does her charting, then cleans the patient's teeth. And then they go to the dentist. The dentist greets the patient and does his or her thing. That's one way of bringing in a new patient. The other way is to make it more doctor-centered. That is, the patient comes in, fills out the paperwork. Now, instead of going right to diagnostics and the hygienist, they go into have a conversation with the dentist. And there, the dentist begins to connect with the patient, and the patient begins to connect with the dentist. They begin to build a relationship. And during that conversation, the dentist learns different things that are important to this patient about why dental care is important to this patient. So there's two schools of thought out there. And right now, this DSO is asking me to put a program together for both. Because some practices are fairly resistant to change. They say, well, we've been doing the hygiene center forever. We just want to be better at what we're doing. And that's not wrong. That's just the way they are. Some practices say, well, we've been doing the hygiene center thing for a while, but we're really ready to take it up another level. Tell us more about the doctor-centered thing. So you asked what I was doing. So
I love that. That's so interesting. We could probably just do, that's the podcast right there. It's just that. So before going into your background, so is there one approach that's more common than the other? One that's more sort of tried and tested?
Well, this has been some territory I've been living in for about the last 2 years right now. Both are successful, okay? Now, as far as prevalence is concerned, typically I see the hygiene-centered approach more prevalent with younger practitioners. Younger practitioners oftentimes will not be totally confident in their ability to connect with patients. So they'll delegate that aspect of it. So maybe the office manager does a little bit of the connection with the patient. Hi, who are you and what do you do and why are you here and how can we help you and tell me about your family, that type of thing. And then they go up to the hygienist. And that's really delegating relationship or delegating what I call empathy. I see that in newer practices. I see that in younger practices. However, as a dentist matures, both professionally, personally, behaviorally, they'll find, and especially clinically, Mike, as a dentist matures clinically, they seek to do more complex care cases. Doing two surface composites and taking out teeth and doing fillings. Hey, that's a great place to get started, but that's not the place where you want to remain as a dentist. Yeah. And most dentists are really avid pursuers of continuing education, implants, restorative dentistry, aligner, orthodontics. Now, those types of cases, the fees are, they can get up there $8, $10, $12, $15, $20,000. I don't know. What would $20,000 in euros be, Mike? I'm not sure.
It's in pounds. It'd be like 15,000 or 18,000, something like that. Yeah, so we're quite similar now. I think the pound in US.
Okay. So anyway, the
A lot of
more
money though.
complex care patient typically is in the practice of a more mature and sophisticated and experienced dentist. And it's those dentists who mostly by trial and error have evolved out of the hygiene centered and more into the doctor centered. They do that because they realize that complex care for patients is personal. And patients want it to be personal to us too, Mike. So, so I would say, to answer to your question, younger practice, startup practices, hygiene center, typically these practices might be seeing 60, 70, 80. One practice I talked to the other day was seeing 100 new patients a month per dentist. And my head exploded when I heard that number. But that's the practice that doesn't have any choice. They have to go to a delegated hygiene-centered process. But that isn't where they want to stay. That got them to where they are. They're calling me because they want to evolve out of that. So anyway, long answer to your question.
No, love it, Paul. That is so, honestly, value out straight out the gate. That's perfect. So before we dig into more, more information about and discussion around the sort of the treatment acceptance arena, I'd love to learn more about you. So tell me a bit about your background and like, how did you get into dentistry?
By accident. I was enlisted in the Air Force. This is right out of undergrad. In 1969, I enlisted in the United States Air Force. They shipped me overseas. While I was overseas, I really enjoyed the military. I did. I was in Air Force before dental school and Navy after. I was a Navy dentist also. But while I was in the Air Force, I realized that, I think I'd like to do something more. And just for the hell of it, right? It was just serendipity. I just plucked it out of the air. I said, I could be a doctor. Then I started talking to doctors and they said getting into med school is impossible. They suggested dentistry. So I applied. I got accepted. Graduated in 1975. Built my first practice immediately in a small rural town called Spruce Pine, North Carolina, in the heart of Blue Ridge Mountains. Practicing at a double-wide mobile home on country people with no fluoride in the water. Lots of dentistry to do.
Amazing.
Yeah, lots of dentistry to do. 2 years later, I moved my practice to Hildebrand, which was about 40 miles east, 40 miles west. And there I built a building and established an implant and restorative practice. I stayed there 2.5 years, then moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, where I spent the next 18 years practicing full mouth reconstruction. I built a commercial dental lab. I hired associates. I got involved with with Carl Misch and other leaders in implant dentistry. I taught at the Misch International Implant Institute for about 8 years. And then in 1995, Mike, I suffered an eye disability to my right eye. The lateral rectus muscle ruptured. I've had several surgeries on the eye. The eye surgeon told me if I didn't stop practicing dentistry, the eye would recross, from convergence of working closely, and that he couldn't correct it a second time. I'd have to go through the rest of my life with a crossed eye. So I fully retired from clinical practice in 1995 and immediately started the business that I'm in right now. That is helping dentists evolve to more complex care dentistry, helping dentists helping dentists have less stress in their practice, and helping build their verbal skills, their influence skills, and their leadership skills. I've written 5 books, Mike. I've got multiple online programs, and I've literally been all over the world as far as teaching and consulting and getting to know a lot of very interesting dentists.
Paul, amazing. So for listeners, this is kind of a unique experience for me because I have a pre-podcast chat, and I usually uncover a lot of this in that pre-podcast chat. But Paul, we tried to have connect, and I think the audio quality wasn't great, and so we just had a very few minutes. I think we had a few words, isn't it? Like just you said, "Oh, come on the podcast, we'll do that." So I didn't know any of this about you, and it's fascinating. Okay. But it's so cool.
Well, now you know.
So military, you've got, you tried to get into med school, went down the dental route. You've had your own practices. You've moved around. I've spoken to a lot of people from North Carolina recently.
Okay.
Like, I don't know why. It just seems to be just that's honestly, And I don't think we're going to have enough time in this one episode to kind of cover everything. So I'm already
we
thinking
can do it.
we
can do
I'm
another.
thinking we need a part two.
Okay.
But no, that's bad. So right, so there's a lot to unpack there, Paul. So
Okay.
it was
So
more
where do we go
accidental.
from here, Mike?
So I would love to just, I think, I think the main focus is always going to be about the, like you say, kind of helping dentists and doctors, reduce stress and improve the case acceptance, because that's, big impact on the practice. I'd quite like to sort of quickly touch on, what did you learn as an associate, and then what did you learn as a practice owner?
Well, as an associate, I was a Navy dentist. And right from dental school, I was stationed at Marine Corps Air Station, Cherry Point, North Carolina. And there, the commanding officer, and again, I'm a general dentist, the commanding officer elected to put me in the Department of Oral Surgery. And I worked with an oral surgeon for 2 years. So what did I learn? Everything about dental alveolar surgery. The only thing I didn't learn was setting fractures, but extracting wisdom teeth, dealing with massive infection, working with facial trauma. The Navy was absolutely the best thing. And Mike, I came real close to going career. I loved the Navy. And the reason I didn't go career is one of my buddies opened a practice in Hickory, North Carolina, which is about 8 hours west. And he had a beautiful office and a brand new car, and he had a bunch of pretty girls working for him. And I thought, you know what? I can handle this.
Easily tempted, Paul. I love that.
I am easily influenced. I admit it.
Excellent. And so, what would be great to ask is, how does doing dentistry in the Navy, in the military, compare to on the civilian side? Like, what's the big differences there?
Oh, the big difference is there's no fees, and plus you outrank most of the people you're working on. So I was 03. I was a Navy lieutenant. In an Army would be called a captain. And most of the people were working on were enlisted people or officers who were at my grade or lower. So there was that immediate position of authority that's absolutely revered in the military. But the biggest difference is that these patients aren't paying for any of this care. And so consequently, I can focus on what is the optimal clinical outcome, as opposed to trying to dance around the issue about what they can afford. And what that taught me, Mike, is that when I learned to talk in terms of behavioral benefits to patients, and these are Marine Corps corporals and sergeants. These aren't 50-year-old patients. These are young patients, and many of them, Mike, come from austere backgrounds. They don't have great dental health, and in order for them to be promoted or stationed overseas, they need to be what's called a class 1 dental shape. No impacted wisdom, no active decay, no active oral infections, no significant facial abnormalities. There's a certain criteria they have to meet before they go overseas. So consequently, and a lot of these Marines, they really wanted to get overseas, Japan, Okinawa, all that. It's just amazing lifestyle. So they really had strong behavioral benefit. And so I would talk to them about restoring their teeth. And they weren't sophisticated restorations, Mike. These are largely amalgam and composites and extractions and maybe some temporary crowns or a crown now and then, but a lot of extractions, a lot of surgery. And I learned to talk to these patients about, the benefit of care is, you'll be qualified to be stationed in Hawaii or Guam. I say, you really can't afford to let your teeth go. Let me show you how we can help you with your promotions. You see, I was talking in terms of behavioral benefit to these patients. I wasn't talking to them about their insurance, and I wasn't over-educating them, Mike. I found that some patients just need more inspiration than education. And a lot of these young Marines, they didn't have a long history of dental. They might have gone to the dentist a half a dozen times in their life. Remember, they're 18, 19 years old, and they're enlisted in the Marine Corps. There's a certain mindset that goes with that. So a big part of what I learned as early in my career is talk to patients about why it's important to them and not why it's important to me, Mike.
Fantastic. So it sounds like you started this kind of the way you talk to patients from like almost the beginning of your career, and it's not something you've just sort of just discovered it's kind of always been part of your makeup?
Oh, very early, very early. I'm in the Navy. In the Navy, that actually started. Not immediately. It took me a little while to figure it out. Actually, I didn't figure it out. The oral surgeon, Dr. Mel Davis, he was good at that. And I'd listen to him. I said, well, that makes a lot of sense. So I just kind of put it into my own style. And yeah, so I've been doing it. I did it for 20 years of my practice. And for the last, 25 or so, teaching other dentists to do it too.
Fantastic. No, that's awesome. So you were doing that, and then obviously you got lured away to your friend's practice. Why did you decide to start your own practice?
Well, because every direction is up, Mike. I was fresh out of the Navy. I had a ton of confidence. Had a wife, a couple of young kids, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. So I was an associate up in Spruce Pine. That's the mountains I was telling you about. And then I built my office, and that taught me a lot. My brother and my dad were contractors, so I knew something about the whole process. And then I hired a team. First dental assistant I hired was a dental hygienist. I thought, I'm going to hire a dental hygienist. That way she can work chairside and she can do hygiene as the hygiene practice built. So I put out the ad for hygienists willing to work chairside. And man, I got a ton of applications. It turns out a lot of hygienists are really anxious to kind of do something more. And so we built a terrific practice. And that's I was there about 2.5 years. And by the end of that 2.5 years, my practice was exclusive to implant and reconstructive dentistry. Because I had the strong dental alveolar surgery background from the United States Navy, I took several implant courses. So I placed my first dental implant, Mike, in 1978. And by the time I retired, I had treated over 4,500 patients with dental implants in either partial or full mouth reconstructions. So those early years in dentistry to me were very, very forming. So why did I start my own practice? Well, because I wanted to swing for the fence, and I really couldn't do that as an associate. Swing for the fence. That's an American phrase that relates to baseball. Okay.
I've recently got into baseball. I'm a Blue Jays fan. I'm a Blue Jays fan.
That's good. I'm a Cubs fan. So off with your head.
Yeah, no, oh man, I could just listen to you for like ages. But no, yeah, so I recently went out to Toronto to stay with Sheila, and she took me to my first baseball game, and it was I want to say Blue Jays versus the Orioles. All
right. Okay. Two East Coast teams. Okay.
Yeah. So that was really good. And they made it into the wild card places, and they lost to the Mariners.
Mariners. Yeah.
Mariners, that's the one. Mariners, yeah. So they got wiped out by them, so that's a bit disappointing. Okay. But no, how are the Cubs doing?
I don't know. I don't really follow baseball, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
I used to, but since Chicago was my hometown, and since I moved out of Chicago, that was 1967. I root for the Cubs and I root for the Bears spiritually. When somebody asks me, who's your team? I'll say Cubs. And then I hope like hell they don't ask a follow-up question like you did, because I don't know.
Excellent. I love that. No, perfect. Right. We'll take it. We'll bring it back. We'll ditch the sports and we'll go back to the dental.
Yeah. Let's talk to dental.
So you did 2.5 years, and you went from like a general practice to a focused on sort of oral surgery and dental implants.
Dental implants, reconstruction, and I hired associate dentists to do the general dentistry. So in my practice, Mike, we had both available. We had sophisticated care for older patients who had significant conditions, and we had the 18-year-old that needs a cleaning and a filling. And I had in over a 20-year span, I had 7 associates, all seven went on to successfully open their own practices and still remained referring doctor to me. Okay. So I prided myself on making it easy for the associates to succeed. And a big part of that, Mike, came from the Navy, because when I went into the Navy, I had all sorts of support. I had experienced people who were working at the front desk and the receptionists and appointments, and they kind of got me on the right route. And then there was Mel Davis, that oral surgeon, and he certainly influenced me. Plus there was other dental officers who had been there in the military longer than I. So everybody kind of nudged me in the right direction. And at the end of 2 years, Mike, when I compared my experience to guys I graduated with who went as traditional associates in civilian practices, I was light years ahead of these guys in terms of what I was able to do clinically, especially in terms of the dental alveolar surgery, comprehensive treatment planning, doing lots of dentistry on lots of patients. So my hand speeds were good. I really learned to work with a chairside assistant well. And so we got it done. So that whole experience for me, created, kind of like, hey, I'll just keep my foot on the gas and let's see where we end up.
Fantastic. I love that. And I also, go ahead.
My foot's still on the gas, Mike.
Yeah, I can tell. There's no sign of you slowing down. Now, what I love about what you've just said is, so the 7 associates that you had, you worked with, have all gone on to have their own practices.
That's right.
That obviously shows that that shows you were obviously a very supportive, practice owner and principal. And because sometimes there can be sometimes be like an associate versus the practice owner kind of vibe. So it sounds like you break the mold there.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of my work it surrounds the development of associate dentists. The owner dentist. Let's just take a solo practice, a 2-doctor practice, a 1-doctor practice, but he wants to bring in an associate to make it a 2-doctor practice. Okay. Now the big mistake is for the Dr. Senior and Dr. Junior to start competing for patients. And another huge mistake is Dr. Senior and Dr. Junior competing for team members. And team members are going to gravitate to one or the other. That gets to be kind of a dicey thing. Well, Dr. Senior, he's been here for a while and patients really love him, and we don't know about this new guy. Meanwhile, the new guy who's got a bunch of school debt and a wife that's going to have a baby, or they're having a baby, and they want to do some things in their life, and they want to get out of this meager lifestyle they've led for the last 4 years in dental school. They want to earn some money. They want to have some freedom. And oftentimes that associate sees Dr. Senior as, but he's only going to let me succeed so far because he's got me on a leash. And senior dentist says, well, I got to keep you on a leash because you don't know what you're doing. I mean, I need to guide you, and I'm going to tell you what to do. And that style of leadership is toxic. And the associate will stick around for maybe 2 years until he gets enough confidence, until he makes enough relationships to whether he hops ships and goes into another associate or joins the military or starts his own practice. I did it exactly the opposite. I told my associates, I'm going to train you to do what I do. And they, well, I can't do that because I don't know this. I said, we're going to start you out slow. So I would start them out slow. And I developed a compensation system to where they could assist me, and I was giving them part of the fee. So they were earning and learning at the same time. And they would charge the same fees that I would charge, Mike. They said, no, you're Dr. Homoly and you're walking on water. I'm going, no, these patients don't know that I'm a semi-celebrity. All they know is Dr. Homoly. That's the only thing they know. I said, you're going to charge the same fees. Well, I said, just charge it. Just say it. And they will say yes if they like and trust you. And so I love these, and I still have greatest relationships, especially with 2 of the guys.
I love that. Honestly, like I said, like there's always like a them versus us situation, and like you're right, they probably they can't. It sounds like there's a lack of communication. You've come in and said very forthright, this is how we're going to do things. I'm going to share my knowledge with you, and that might be the difference. Do you think?
No, it goes beyond lack of communication. It's lack of intention. You see, in the bad communication is a result of unclear or greedy intention. If Dr. Senior is bringing in an associate to kind of pick up the scraps and answer emergencies on the weekend, then his or her communication is going to reflect that. It's going to be very authoritarian. It's going to be, here's what we're going to do. And there's going to be a lack of what's the word? Lack of ambivalence, not benevolence. There's a lack of benevolence. Benevolence is the intention to do well by others. And so if I am a benevolent dentist, if I have benevolence, I want to seek good outcomes for my patients. I want to seek good outcomes for my team and my associate dentist. That my language is going to reflect my intention. But if my intention is just to use some associate to pick up the scraps, then my language is going to reflect that too. So this is especially important, Mike, when Dr. Senior is, maybe in his 50s and Dr. Junior is in their late 20s, early 30s. And then there's dental assistants and staff members that could be the mothers or fathers of the new associate. You get into this generational stuff and these different issues, and the complexity of communication and my glasses are crooked. There we go. The intention comes out in the language. I mean, you think of it. What's my intention in this podcast, Mike? Based on how I'm communicating with you and all your listeners. What's my intention?
Oh, you want me to get to help my audience?
I lost volume.
Oh, you lost the volume. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Right. One moment, listeners. We'll get Paul back in a second.
Let me see here. Mute.
I think we're good. I'm just going to check it's mine. We can cut this out as well, so that's fine. Yeah, I'm good. All right.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah,
okay.
Perfect.
For some reason, my ear amps, the Bluetooth switched out, and so I'm on my computer speakers right now, which I don't love. So if there's an echo, let me know.
Okay, I'm just going to talk. There is a little bit of an echo.
A little bit of an echo.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep talking just to see if it kind of disappears.
I tell you what, let's do this. Let me just pause. Let me do one thing.
Yeah,
and perfect. I'll be back. I think I can fix this. Hold on.
That's fine, Paul. I'm just gonna keep it live, but we'll cut this out during the
okay,
the actual edit. That's fine. Thank you. Technology is great when it works.
All right, let's see what we got here. Okay, here. All right.
Perfect.
All right, I hear you well now. I went to
gone old school.
I went old school here. I'm gonna bench my Bluetooth, and it's like I golf, Mike, and when you can't make a putt, what you do is you change putters. You put the old one in the garage for punishment, but then you take it out in 6 months and it's much better. So
excellent. I love that. Just blame the equipment. It's perfect.
All right, good.
So I think you were just asking me, what's the intention of you being on the podcast, or what's the intention you're having? I have no idea where you're going with that.
Okay. Well, you said the problem between Dr. Senior and Dr. Junior was their communication.
Yes.
The point I made, the communication is a subset of their intention. And intention can be interpreted by the listener through how a speaker will sound, move, smile, facial expression, tone, pitch, volume, rate, all those types of things. And that through your ability to emotionally intelligent to decipher intention, people will get that you're there for them. And so my question for you is, based on how you and I are speaking right now, our exchange, my question is, what do you interpret my intention? Why am I on this podcast? See, what's my intention here based on how I sound?
So the way you sound is you're here to share value, and you'll share your experience, and it's a very positive intention. That's what I'm getting from you right now.
And that's what I want you to have. I'm not lecturing. You and I are just having a conversation. And my intention, my intention. This phone keeps ringing. I'm gonna have to shut it off here. My intention is to have a good time, to give you some great information, and help your listeners. And
Fantastic.
you learn that through how I sound and how I speak. So speaking skills among dentists to audience, dentists to team members, is if you get the right intention, so much of the language process works out on its own. I mean, if you want to be bossy, well, then you sound bossy. If you want to be excited, you sound excited. And most highly educated professionals, dentists, physicians, IT professionals, financial planners, their education doesn't give them anything in terms of how to be authentically interesting when you're talking about something that you're very knowledgeable about. How to, because so many of our clients, people we serve, whether they're patients or borrowers, or if I'm a builder, it would be my homeowners. So much of how an expert communicates with the non-expert, we'll call the non-expert the novice. So much of how the content expert communicates with the novice is based on the intention or the lift in their verbal skills, as opposed to talking to someone where it's like listening to them is like a death march.
like you'd rather watch paint dry. Like sometimes some people people are so monotone. Yeah,
exactly right. Exactly right.
no, love that. Fantastic. So Paul, at this point, I'm gonna have to say, can we come back around another time and go more in depth about your practice ownership life?
Okay,
that
sure.
would be fantastic. And in the meantime, I'd love to then focus more on patient treatment acceptance, and obviously what you're passionate about right now. So you've already kind of given some tips and hints at kind of like what makes what improves that process.
Sure.
Why do a lot of practices get this element wrong, or how do they get it so wrong?
Well, they've never been trained in it. You hear this a lot from dental salespeople or dental vendors. They'll say, yeah, well, dentists are good at fixing teeth, but they're not very good business people, right? And when I hear that, I tell the business person, I said, well, I understand business people are good at business, but they're very not good dentists. And they look at me kind of weird. I said, well, you're not a good dentist because you haven't been trained in it, right? You didn't have a career of doing dentistry. You have a career of operating and doing what you do in business, either sales or marketing or whatever it is. I said, the dentists haven't had that experience. They've been in a highly clinical environment for 4 years. They may come out and go into another highly clinical environment, and all of a sudden they're expected to be good business people. That'd be like you walking into an operatory and somebody handing you a handpiece and saying, okay, let's see what you got, big guy, right? So
you do not want me anywhere near your mouth.
That's exactly right.
But that is a really, that is a good point. That sentiment comes up a lot. Dentists aren't great at marketing, business, finance thing.
Sure.
But you're right. Like they, up until this point, they haven't needed to. And it's going to take some time to get to a good level.
Yeah, but a lot of that, I don't know how much of that, but I know a good bit of it that is dentists not being good businessmen or business people. That's going away pretty quickly. Here in the States, we have a huge flood of venture capital going into the creation and sustaining the large dental group practice. When I say large, I'm talking about 300, 400, 500 practices, and even smaller intermediate practices too. And in order to lead that, if you're going to become, let's say, a chief dental officer of a large group, you really need to have your stuff together. And it's not so much about the teeth anymore. It's all about the people, and it's all about the numbers. So people and numbers, that's called business, Mike. And so they really need to get up to speed. And I've met some incredibly, just really clever and successful dentists who turned business people, both being a business leader in the dental industry or being a leader in other industries. One of my closest friends became the director of the Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation. That's one of the world's landmarks as far as beautiful, stretches from Virginia down to Florida. And so the Blue Ridge Parkway is just a gem. Well, he raised money for it, and he ran that whole thing. Another one of my former associates has started a investment group into rental homes in the United States. He's done exquisitely well with it. So dentists, you got to be smart to get into dental school. You even got to be smarter to get out of dental school. And with that kind of cognitive ability, you can do a lot with it. You can get a business degree or a law degree, and if you got your practice managed pretty well, you need to do something with your life. Now, some dentists don't choose to do that. Some dentists will, turn inward and have extended family relationships. They have many kids, and those kids grow up and they go all sporting events, and they coach the sporting events, and they have friends who have got big families, and it's that social domestic community they're in. And in order to be a leader at a regional or a national level, you need to be able to travel. You need to be able to show up places on the weekends where there's critical meetings. And a lot of that is in direct opposition to being a family kind of person. And so there's a price to pay. There's a price to pay if you elect to, kind of keep it on the sidelines, have a nice practice, have a nice family, and kind of work on your golf game and coach their baseball team. And that's a dentist that I find truly are probably the happiest, to tell you the truth. The dentists who have the most zeros in their retirement plans, it seems to be that they have multiple careers. They got a clinical practice, but they also have a side job that might be almost equal in income as to their practice. And as we age, boy, it gets tougher and tougher to physically practice. Your neck hurts, your back hurts, your hands are not what they used to be, your eyesight sucks. and so dentists don't have an elder statesman image. We're not like judges, right? I mean, I think the prime of so many dentists is probably 45 to 55. But I know when I turned 60, that's when I started getting out of the chair a little bit slower. And it's tough. And it's tough. And I only practiced 20 years. The guys who have been practicing 30, that's a different deal. So the dentist who has got the side hustle of owning another business or running for the president of their dental society or stuff like that, those dentists are go, go, go. And that's the type of dentist that really resonates to what I'm about. I certainly love my family. However, there's a part of me that seeks purpose. And fixing a tooth, that gave me plenty of purpose for a while. But after 20 years, I've fixed enough. But cognitively, I still have my foot on the gas. So what do I do with it? Do I go take a course in implants? No. I'll take a course in storytelling or business or online programs, right? That's what I'll do. And combining that with my history, my God, I go back, before there was electricity on this stuff. And so I got a lot of stories to tell, and I learned a lot of it through working with my clients, just some simple things that just have made amazing differences, and certainly in my life, but more importantly in the people that I serve.
No, that's fantastic, Paul. That's honestly, this is pure gold right now. And so with, training is one element where, a practice might let itself down, like not training the staff and not training the team. Are there any other areas where like a practice might let itself down from like a case acceptance perspective?
Okay. So the question is, I understand it, other than training, what else is one of the derailers for dentists with treatment acceptance? Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Well, again, it's not homogeneous. It's really situational based on the career domain of the dentist. Let's take the early domain dentist up to maybe 5 years in practice. One of the big derailers there is too often they will recommend care based on their own ability to pay. They get a little hesitant in quoting a $10,000 or $15,000 fee because they couldn't write a check for $10,000 or $15,000. So treatment plans get diluted to the level where the dentist, and the dentist may not even be conscious, most of them aren't, that they're doing that. The second thing derails these dentists early in their career, Mike, is they'll put together treatment plans based on what insurance will pay. In the States, there's a lot of insurance issues here. I believe in overseas where you are, you've got your national dental health, plus you got private practitioners, correct, Mike?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And so the whole idea of only treatment planning for what you think the third parties will pay, huge mistake. Another thing that happens is that younger dentists tend to feel sorry for patients who are really screwed up. I mean, patients who really need a break, Mike. I don't mean to say screwed up as in they're not worthy people, but they just had a tough time. The 29-year-old single mom who's, her husband either divorced her or she divorced him, and they got a couple of kids, and they don't come from money. And so she's working her tail off, and she loves her kids, but her life is tough. But she's also got a mouthful of problems. She's a former smoker. She and her husband earlier in her life liked to party a lot. And so consequently, she's got some pretty significant tooth decay. So she's got $25,000, $30,000 worth of problems in her mouth. And it's easy to over empathize or sympathize into, well, we'll go ahead and we'll do this at a reduced fee for you and all that. And I'm not saying, Mike, you don't give patients charity. I did. We selected a couple people every year who were unlucky in life, and we rebuilt their mouths. And we told them, every year we pick out a few, and you're the one. But you are going to pay the lab fees. I made them have some skin in the game, and they were proud to be able to pay that. And so they're paying me, $2,500 for a $25,000 case, And I would say another mistake that young dentists make is and probably this is probably the biggest derailer of all, is they really fail to connect. When I say connect, they fail to give the patient a sense that they'll be well cared for. They fail at giving the patient a sense that this is personal for you too. They fail at giving the patient a sense of who they are, other than in their role as dentist. Mike, I was always quick to, and this is one of the things that I coach in my programs, is that patients, see, the treatment acceptance process, Mike, is a leadership conversation. You're influencing patients to go in the direction of their own best interest. That's what it is. And for people to follow, they need to know who they're leading. Now, they need to know more about you than just your role as dentist. They can see that role. But I was always quick to reveal my role as father, as son. I did some ballroom dancing. I played the violin in 4th and 5th grade. I was in a rock band when I was an undergrad. And I would just come up with these, I'd find little ways to kind of ease these into conversations. And what was amazing is that when I did it, they would do it. They would tell me about the rock band they were in, or they would tell me about, I did quite a bit of water skiing, slalom water skiing. And, oh yeah, well, we had a boat, and let me tell you about a time when and what happens is that you become closer. You become closer. And that failure to do that is the number one problem. Because from that, if you don't connect, then everything you say afterwards becomes price sensitive and open for competition. Other dentists, treatment planning the same work. Now the patient be carrying fees, and what clearly is the upper hand in the competitive nature of dentists. Should I have this dentist or that dentist do my case? The ace in the hole, the killer card that takes it all is, how does the patient feel about themselves as a result of our conversation? How do they, when they walk out the door, wow, that was, I feel good about coming here. And they care less, far less about, well, how well did that dentist educate me on my condition? And I'm not saying mic education isn't important, but the one thing that young dentists do right is they educate their patient. That's the same problem that will keep them from going on from learning the skills to connect with patients to the level I've said. So yeah. Failure to connect is a career limiting error that oftentimes, Mike, goes unnoticed for the dentist's entire career. It isn't like he's got 20 years experience. He's had 1 year experience 20 times. And I'm not, I'm just saying what I hear and what I work with all the time.
Honestly, Paul, that is fascinating. And I also I love the fact that I love how passionate you get about it. You can really, again, you can hear it in your voice. You can really tell that you care about this, and you can tell, it's honestly, it's amazing.
Well, it's important. It's an important conversation. It's important work. What you do is important, Mike. I mean, look at you. You're sitting behind a microphone. You've got this podcast, and you're like Johnny Appleseed. You're just throwing out good things to help other.
I'm trying to. That's and that is the whole point of the podcast. It's to bridge that gap between the clinical side of a dentist and the business side, and like, how can I help these people that want to grow a business and stuff. And so getting people on like you is fascinating. I'm having a great time on this side of things. So I honestly I can listen to you all day. So what are some of the things that a practice or a dentist can do to obviously improve this? What are the specific things that you help them with? Like, maybe tell us more about your program. Like, how does that transform things?
Yeah. Right before COVID hit, I decided that I was going to put my best stuff online and create an online school, Homoly online training school. And so I just bit the bullet and spent months putting together videos, instructional design, and I put together what I feel is the most complete body of work in the new patient experience and treatment acceptance. And then COVID hit, right? And so all of my paid honorarium presentations, which are about, maybe 2, maybe 3 a month, okay? All of that went away, poof, up in smoke. And what did everybody do? Everybody went online. And I had an online program. Okay?
Honestly, that is so. When did you do that again, Paul? Like, what year was that? Like 2019?
Yeah, it was 2019. I used 2018 to build that online program. In 2019, right after that, that's when COVID started coming near the end of the year. COVID started.
Oh man, did you have a crystal ball?
No, I was just it was just dumb luck.
Just good timing.
Yeah, the problem is I didn't know anything about online learning. I should have said I didn't know anything. I knew how to teach people from the front of the room, but when you get on this, kind of deal, you got to know a lot. So I became a big student of online learning, and I love it. I love it. I tell you what, I mean, how much fun are you and I having right now, right? I mean, this,
Yeah.
yeah, and it doesn't cost anything to do this. I mean, I didn't get a bill before I, so.
I hope I don't get a bill.
Yeah, you get a bill. No, you won't get a bill. You won't get a bill.
But no, honestly, so you've got your online course, and that's obviously that's one way for people to kind of learn more about it.
Go to my website. My website is my name. It's Paul Homoly, Paul. Well, you can see it. It's on the screen right there. I assume they can see it.
Yes.
It's paulhomoly.com. And you go on my website and you look for what's called Treatment Acceptance Mastery. It's right on the homepage, and that's where you go. Now, if you're a chief dental officer or owner of a large group practice, then you want to click the button that says Training at Scale Mastery. That's a train-to-trainer program. I train trainers, Mike, on how to teach what I train. Okay, and when you're in a large group practice, you need to have trainers to kind of go around from office to office to keep people on track. And so I offer programs for the individual, the non-group practice, and it's a significant piece of work. And the dentist or the office manager or some administrator in the practice can facilitate this. So they watch videos together. There's streaming audio they can listen to in the car, and there's workbooks and that kind of thing. And so that's an easy way to get started fast. And so it's called Treatment Acceptance Mastery. And then as dentists get more of an appetite for this, then it really comes down to doing live workshops, hands-on, where now that we're over COVID, now all of the live stuff is coming back. And so typically I'll put 20 dentists in a room for a day or two, and we'll do case studies, and we'll work on our verbal skills. We'll work on how do you structure and how do you deliver a new patient interview? What's the post-exam discussion like? What do you say to patients when they say they're not concerned about a condition? And finally, the treatment presentation and financial conversation. That's always the sticker. That's when the hair on their back stands up. The patient says, well, how much will all this cost? And they go, well, my treatment coordinator will handle that. And they run out of the room, right? Well, you talk about a buzzkill. That's a big buzzkill for a patient right there. Hey, the higher the fee, the more important it is for the dentist to quote the fee. I'm not saying the dentist should make financial arrangements or talk about insurance or appointments, none of that. I'm just saying when a patient asks you a direct question, how much, doc, I love your treatment plan. It sounds great. I have to watch my budget. How much does all this cost? You need to be able, without missing a beat or losing eye contact, and say something like, Mike, your total care is going to be $18,500. Now, you said right now you're not interested in replacing the back teeth over here and over here, and I understand that. The fee for the work you are interested in is the enhancing the appearance of your front teeth so you're more confident in front of your business associates and eliminating that gum infection. That fee is in that $8,500 range. Mike, is something like that comfortable for you? Is that something you want to think about or do now? Tell me how you feel about that. You see, and what I'm doing is I'm supporting the patient emotionally through their decision. Again, I have the highest authority in the dental practice. And what I want to do during the treatment presentation, and especially the financial conversation, Mike, is to be able to manifest the experience of empathy. I want patients to know that I understand them, okay? That's key, because I don't ever want to get them to think that they are getting a sales pitch. I want them to feel, hey, I'm really on, this guy's really on my side. And even though I can't accept most of it, I certainly are going to stick around long enough. And when I can afford the rest of it, I'm coming back. And that's how we build practices right there, Mike.
Honestly, that is a masterclass in how you should speak to a patient.
Well,
I'm blown away. I'm blown away.
That's what you asked me to do. Yeah.
Honestly, fantastic. Paul, I've said this multiple times. But yeah, this is honestly one of the best interviews I've ever done. Like, it's just so interesting. Like, you're a fascinating person. You've got some great value to add to practices. And oh man, I wish this was longer, but I am conscious of your time. So I'm going to get you back on. So after this
Oh yeah.
podcast, we'll get you back on. But one of the questions I always ask, and every question, and it's interesting how sometimes they're regardless of the number of people I ask, there's a few themes. But based on your experience of being a dentist, of owning a practice, of working with dentists and dental practices, what's your number one piece of advice for anyone thinking about buying or starting a dental practice? Like, what's that one thing they really need to know?
If they're going to buy a practice, that, and I assume you're not asking me for business advice here. I think what you're asking, and tell me if I'm wrong here, I think what you're asking is emotionally, how do they need to be prepared? Where their head is at? Is that what you're asking? You're not.
Yeah. So I guess it might be helpful for you to be like, what do you wish you'd known before buying your first practice? Like, what would have been like would have saved you time, and what would have saved you money, like or headache? Like, what would that be for you?
Well, one of the things I would never do again is build a dental lab. The dental lab business is a tough business to be in, and I owned the lab, and the lab technicians were employees, and they were great guys, but it's a hell of a business, and it kind of sucked the energy out of me. I would say for the dentist who's starting out, that if you're going to start out, if you're going to make the financial investment in facility and equipment and hiring people, you need to be full in. You see, if your happiness is completely derived from anything other than dentistry, okay, you're kind of in trouble. And here's what I mean by that. There's so much that you're going to go through. You're going to learn as a business person. There's times you're going to be scared. You're going to be surprised by how dental team members will react. You're going to learn the challenges of leadership. Plus, you've got the additional responsibilities of patients who you need to serve well. And if you don't serve them well, there's a price to pay for that. So you've got medical, legal, stuff around you too. The stakes are higher. You need to be full in. Don't think that you can cakewalk into this. Yet, let's say you see patients for 6 hours a day. Well, in the beginning, you're going to be spending, 8 to 12 hours a day figuring stuff out, or taking weekends and taking clinical continuing education, or attending study club meetings. If you don't fully engage, your growth curves are going to be much flatter. However, if you completely engage, and the spouse and the kiddos need to know that. And it's not that you don't love them or don't want to be with them, but there's time when you just need to kind of circle the wagons and put your foot on the gas. And that doesn't mean you don't love them. There needs to be that home work harmony. It's not work-life balance. I'm not talking about that. There's no such thing. We're going to work more than we're going to spend time with our children. That's the fact. We're going to spend more time with patients than sometimes we do with our spouses. That's just the way it is. We got more people who are non-family around us than family. So consequently, you need to let them know, the people who are important in the family, that you're still there for them. However, the season that your life is in right now requires you to be a better steward. And there's no saying that they can't be part of that. However, be careful. If you can never hire someone you can't fire. Okay. Ask me how I know.
Right. You tell me. Yeah. How do you know, Paul? Come on. You've got to. You can't leave with that and then not give it to me.
So
I've got a great story. I fired my mum.
Okay.
When I used to work for my dad, and one of the first things I did was get rid of my mum.
Nice going. So then, yeah, then Thanksgiving gets to be a kind of a, okay, is Mike going to show up?
Luckily, it was never. It wasn't. I think my mum was kind of looking for an out.
Yeah.
So it wasn't. It wasn't like a. But I can imagine if the person doesn't see it coming, or it just gets handled inappropriately or badly, then I can imagine, yeah, not great from a family cohesiveness.
I would have loved to have been a fly in the room. I can hear it now. Mom, have a seat. There's something that.
Yeah.
What is it, Mike? You're out of here. Pack your stuff up, and you're out of here.
So, yeah, it was. I think it was actually a way more chill conversation, and it was my dad and my dad, brother, and me worked together, and yeah, I think we were like trying to like not be the one to do it, and I just happened to be. It was me, so yeah, you'll always forget that day. You always remember that day.
Yeah, that's
anyway.
Funny. That's
anyway,
funny.
Paul. So to wrap things up.
I'm stretching my back now.
Oh no!
I laughed
I haven't broken you, have I?
I laughed so hard I got a cramp. Okay, wrap things up, Mike. Come on.
So to wrap things up, if people are interested in contacting you, and I really highly recommend that they do reach out to you, you know, where can they get more information? How can they get in touch with you?
Sure.
List them off, and I'll make sure that they're included in the show notes.
The easiest way, just go to my website. I said it earlier, www.paulhomoly.com. You can read about my stuff. If you want to talk, then there's a link that you can click, and I offer a no-charge 15-minute consultation. If you just want to kind of connect and see if we might be good for each other, that's available too. And plus, when you go on the website, oh boy, this cramp is getting worse here. Sorry. When you go on the website, you go to my video blog, and you can watch dozens and dozens of videos with me talking about stuff just like we were. So that's what I would say, Mike. Go to the website, check it out, watch the videos. If you want to talk, you can schedule a 15-minute consult if you like, and go from there. Or, you know, maybe sometime your company and I get together and maybe we do some live shows in the United Kingdom.
Honestly, I would love that. Come here. I am more than happy to come to the States. Last month, September. Yeah, last month I was in San Diego, and I was like, "This is great. I need to do this more often." A potential partner just invited me to New York for the Great New York?
Yeah, Greater New York
dental meeting.
Yeah, a group of dentists down in Australia is bringing me out for about a week and a half. I'm doing 4 programs for them.
Oh,
so something we can talk about. The reason I'm moving is I got this. We better end this webinar before I fall down.
That's right. Perfect. Right, Paul. First of all, thank you so much for your time today. Like, super appreciate it. I know my audience will get a kick out of it and benefit massively. I've loved having a front row seat.
Okay.
And I'm gonna hang up now because I need to make sure that you're okay. So thanks, Paul.
All right. See you, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.